There is no book, there is no podcast, there is no movie, there is no silent retreat or ayahuasca ceremony that is going to solve all of your business problems. The quickest way to building a successful business or transitioning a business or pivoting is what I say is to just do the damn thing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What's Next. And there is no better way to kick into this new year other than the fact that there are about 75 degrees that separate my guest and I from outside temperature. I'm on the losing end of that equation. But her energy, fervor, and passion for sport as it relates to business, and you don't interchange the two of those, will be unmistakable within 10 minutes into this episode. And so I'm kicking this off in a way that if you're looking at your team and wondering, we have everybody in the right spot. We feel like we're in the right place. I've got all these A players, but holy crap, we're still not winning. I think I've got the right person for you, because the true belief of culture fails under pressure. The idea is, how do you fix it? So my next guest, Katrina Ghazarian, is a good friend of mine from San Diego Sports Innovators. She has the great pleasure of living in San Diego, whereas I have to bounce back and forth. And right now I'm in the frozen tundra of Michigan. She comes to us with having started her own business, coached and played basketball at high levels. She went off on her own and did her own thing, which was pretty cool. Has aspirations to do even bigger and better things in sports, which we'll get to in a little bit. Has been on TED, doing TED Talks. So her experience here, both in HR and business ownership, is irrefutable. But more importantly, she has the passion of an athlete, which she brings to the game. So Katrina, thank you for being a guest on the show, and welcome in.
Thank you for having me. I feel like you forgot to say a lot of other accomplishments and achievements that I have. I was voted funniest when I was in the 5th grade. Hello.
You see, that's the kind of stuff that my team doesn't dig in deep enough. Even though I actually did see that in the bio, I'm like, I don't really want to rib you on that. But I think I would have been voted most likely in 5th grade, voted most likely to be on the 1,000-pound loser or something. I was an obese kid as a little tyke. And thankfully, life grew me up this way and not more that way. But maybe that's why I became a goalkeeper. So who knows? Life spins us in those great directions. So our job here is to get out of the boardroom, into the locker room, really familiar space for you. Let's dive into it. So we talk about culture breaks under pressure, right? And so you've seen it both as a business owner, which we're going to talk about, and in helping corporate clients, which I think is so cool because you've lived on both sides of these things. When you look at sort of the culture, which a lot of people think is the mission statement above the door when somebody walks in or whatever it is, maybe just describe for the crew here and the audience, what do you look at when you see culture, and why does it break when it gets under pressure?
One of the first things that I look at is the behavior of the executive team. And I believe that there's a misconception that there's this very deep audit of behaviors, that you need to be some kind of behavioral scientist in order to professionally assess the behavior of the executive team. But what it comes down to for me are the habits of the executive team. Sometimes that is so simple as, are they showing up on time to meetings, whether they're physical meetings or virtual meetings? What are they doing during those meetings? Are they giving the meetings their full attention? Are they responding to emails? Are they checking their phone? What types of excuses do they make when goals aren't being achieved or metrics aren't being hit? How are they communicating? Are they giving feedback in real time? Are they venting to other employees, whether that be lateral employees, other executives, or even downline? Are they complaining about certain things and not giving feedback in real time? Are they accountable to their own mistakes? Do they take responsibility for the failures of a project or communication? How are they sending emails, or how are they communicating to their team? Are they utilizing the right vehicle for the right message? And how is that message being delivered? So these are all of the things that I start looking at that ultimately tell me whether or not they have a culture of accountability and responsibility, and who is really driving the culture of the organization. So it's a lot simpler than I think LinkedIn wants you to believe. These culture experts are writing these very long, what I call them nothing burger, word salad type newsletters or articles that aren't really telling you how to stimulate change in a very simple, matter of fact way. And I believe for me, historically, that is how I've been able to build my own brand, is that I am very matter of fact with my communication. I don't really know a lot of big words, so I don't use them anyway. And I think that it's a lot simpler to look at culture than people are letting it out to be, mystifying it.
Okay, so that's awesome. Let's bring it down. What's what I love about talking to athletes is we always sort of let's just drill down to the least common denominator, make it simple, take some action. I'm a note taker. Everybody knows that through my series here. So if we really look at it, then you're talking about the habits that make sense. And I think as athletes, we get that, right? Because in the training room, out on the field, practice, getting ready for games, we always talk about habits. So if I've made the transition, I'm thinking about this from an audience perspective. You're telling me the easiest way to go in and sort of do a self audit, self assessment is the list of things you just mentioned. Just do you show up on time? How do you communicate? How do you both verbally and in writing? And are you present, right? Are you giving truthful reviews? Are you actually leaning in with people, or are you guarded and not doing it? So if someone says, okay, yeah, no, I feel like I'm showing up on time and I'm responding correctly, we've got some good formulation put in place, but it still doesn't feel like we are really rowing in the same direction and crushing it. So I'll forget the obvious, right? Yeah, we're all fractured over there. That needs work. But I do think that I'm saying and doing the right things, but we're not seeing the right results. And again, you've seen it as an owner and as a consultant or a coach. Where then do you dig in? If I'm an owner, where do I start digging in and saying, okay, where do I peel maybe a few of the layers back in the onion from here?
I really look at their vision, mission, and how they set goals. Oftentimes, when I've been in planning meetings, quarterly, annual, however, a lot of the goals that are being set cannot pass a stress test, cannot be challenged, will fall apart if challenged, will fall apart when asking basic questions. For example, a goal for a company is we want 50% of market share. I'll ask questions like, well, how big is the market? Shouldn't that size of that market or 50% be in direct relationship with your revenue goals or your profit goals or the number of customers that you have? Business is complicated as it is. Being successful in business is really tough, right? It feels very elusive to a lot of people. So because of that, you have to really focus on getting the things that are easily calculable right. So anything that has to do with math should be, as Gen Z would say, mathing correctly, because those are the only sure things that will make sense is the numbers. So when you start throwing arbitrary numbers out and you don't have appropriate data to support why you chose that number in the first place, whether that number is how many of your customers are buying this particular set of products, whether that number is based off of certain customer satisfaction surveys. Even in HR, we'll see, well, to be honest, the issue with HR is we don't see any metrics, but if an HR department is following some metrics, turnover rate might be one, but turnover rate isn't necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes you just have to turn people over. And I sure as heck don't want to keep people for the sake of my turnover number. And so things like, well, we want to get to a turnover rate of 10%. Okay, well, what is it right now? And why 10%? And if you tell me it's because our turnover rate, if your turnover rate's 50%, 10% is a really lofty goal to hit. And so I really look at what is the vision? What is the mission? How are they setting goals? How are they keeping people accountable to those goals? Are they setting the right goals? Do those goals make sense? Do their teams understand those goals? Because typically, if let's say what you're saying, company is doing everything right from a habitual standpoint, then Typically, the issue is how the vision, the mission, and the goals are being communicated, not at an executive level, but all the way down to the front line. Do your frontline employees understand how the business works? Do they understand who their customers are? Do they understand what the customer's problems are? And do they have the agency at least to solve that problem, or at minimum be a part of the focus groups that are looking for solutions on how to solve that problem? So if a company was coming to me and I was looking at their habits and the habits were great, this would be stage 2 of how I would be assessing their vision, their mission, their goals, and communication.
So the common words here for most of our audience, we talk a lot about EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. You and I, Katrina, have used this for many years. And so this language of accountability, mission, vision, values, understanding these things become commonplace. As you're talking about this being stage 2 and a good check-in point, if you're listening to this and saying, yeah, my mission and my values, again, might be that thing that we have printed over the door on the office, but are all things matched up? It does point to, if you think things are humming, but they are not matched up, that's probably where you're going to find the break point, right? So we're trying to work through, where do I find these chinks in the armor to make sure that I can take some action against it? I'm assuming you're listening to this because you want to take some action. And with your background in HR, forgive me for the overarching statement, you own your own company, Game Day HR, but really, I think you've coined the phrase HR sucks, right? So we often do think about, you don't need any data. HR just handles people. And really, it's just people coming in and out of organization. But you've taken this really cool spin on making it more of the heartbeat of the business, if you will, which I just think is fascinating because it's so tied to culture. As athletes, the phrase, the game starts to speed up, right? We can feel it. It's coming. And it is another separation point. When the game speeds up, those that aren't prepared fall away. Those that are tend to rise and shine, and they come into those moments. You had that time where, having some experience, either coming out of school or going through corporate, now you're doing your own thing. The game is speeding up. When did you kind of decide, maybe I don't want to do the corporate thing as a job? I want to go do this on my own as an entrepreneur. Was there like an aha moment, or what was the flashpoint for you where you said, I think I'm going to do it?
It's not as glamorous as most stories you probably hear about starting a business, but it really came down to, my daughter was 3 years old. I was a single mom. Remote work was not a thing during that time, and I really needed to have a more flexible schedule. I approached my employer at the time and I asked them if I can change my schedule around so that I could leave the office by 3 o'clock, go pick her up, have some time with her, and then come back online after dinner. And it just wasn't something that felt right to them. They weren't doing it for anybody else. And so I literally woke up one morning and just decided that, if I don't do something now, this is going to be my life. I'm going to kind of watch my daughter grow up, without really being a huge presence in it. And so I decided at that point, I gave a 30-day resignation, and I was going to help them backfill my position because that was my job with them. And I was going to spend the next month looking for clients, really. And so I gave my 30 days resignation, and then we were looking at candidates. They didn't like any of them. And I decided that a week before my last day, I was going to pitch them my new services. I knew the language that they spoke were numbers and data. So I put together a presentation that really incorporated how much they'd be saving by not backfilling my role, but still using me as a contractor. I presented the numbers to them, and they ended up accepting, and they were my clients for 8 years after that. It really just was about family for me, which I think is very common probably among moms, is that we are pushed a certain direction because we want to be there for our families, our kids, what our kids or our parents, depending on what's going on. So that was the reason why I went. And I would say the subconscious part of me was feeling like they didn't really listen to me. And I was kind of warning them on certain decisions that they were making. They weren't heeding any of my warnings. I was left to have to clean it up. until probably the very last thing. And I basically told them, I'm not cleaning this up. You're going to clean it up because I need you to feel the pain of your decision
Mhm.
so you don't make this decision anymore. So subconsciously, it was probably like, I don't like people telling me what to do either. And that was why I left, and the universe conspired for this to happen for me in a way that elevated me from employee to more of a partner service provider to them. But that was the reason why I ended up leaving traditional employment for consulting. I don't think it's for everyone. I think that you really like, I had to have had a certain level of arrogance to think that I could go do that. But, I think being a mom, it was something that was going to, it didn't matter if I made less money as long as I was able to be there for her.
You just nailed it. I think on every episode, regardless of where we've started the conversation, and I'd say give yourself credit here because you said this doesn't sound very sexy. I personally think it sounds amazing when you know what your why is, even if the universe has got to sort of lean back in on you and say, your why is you want to be an awesome mom and you want to be present. I don't think there's any higher calling on the planet when given the opportunity. And so when the why is great enough, you had the audacity to do that. I think you had the bravery also because the consequence of not being an awesome mom just wasn't negotiable. So hugely, honestly, we could probably stop here and be done. That for most athletes, what
Well,
they
then,
yeah, literally. I mean, most athletes are driving at the fact that we think on the outside that, oh, there's all this freedom that comes regardless of what you make. Like you said, it didn't matter about the money. It really mattered about the freedom to choose to be an awesome mom and be present. And the rest of life follows 4 kids later and all that you're doing, dealing with sick ones at home and challenges of going into high school and all the great wonders that come with that all happened because you chose to have the freedom to do that. And again, it's not for everybody, but even in corporate environments, having the freedom of your time and where you spend it is super important. So I appreciate that you listened to your why. Obviously, it is where you are today, and that continues to drive. And if I go back to one higher, when you really said control the controllables, you were doing just that. So you've not only proven that you do it in your own life, which probably makes you an awesome consultant, but you actually do it for your clients, which then leads me to ask this question, which one's easier? Is it easier to like direct your clients or is it easier to direct you and the team at Game Day HR?
it's much easier to direct me and the team because I have control over my mission and my vision and how we set goals. I take my own medicine. I don't go to my clients and preach a certain way of life and then not internalize that. There have been times where I probably got lazy as the team was growing. And for example, individual development plans, like it probably took me longer than I should have to put IDPs together for my own team, even though we were doing them for our clients. And so it's much easier for me to do it internal and direct myself than it is to get clients to really just grasp what I'm trying to conceptually what I'm trying to say. Sometimes they hear me, but they want to understand it, but they just don't understand it conceptually. And sometimes I'm like, we're actually not ready to work together. Here's 10 books you need to read before we work together because they're just not ready for the message. And I've gotten better over the years of screening those types of companies to truly understand if they are in fact ready to work with us. And because if they're not really ready and I'm pushing a boulder up the hill, I can't get satisfaction as quickly as I'd like to get. And so that then hurts my brand and then creates a weird relationship between me and the client. So I have to know that they're ready. And I would say for me internally, I'm ready. I'm always ready. Let's go. Let's do
Yep.
this. My team, they're ready. They're ready for more. They want more. They're learning as they go. With clients, it's much more difficult from my experience.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? Because whether you're a coach who has a team early in the season, right, you've got a bunch of guys who are ready and some that even if they're grizzled vets, they come back in a little out of shape, need to ease into it. And I think the parallels are always there between kind of sport and our corporate world. And I would say for our corporate leaders or for those of you making that transition, right, the show is about what's next. And we put an exclamation point there for a reason. It's what's next as in the journey, not what's next as a destination. And so I say that based on what Katrina was sharing, is that if you don't know your why of why you're hiring a consultant, why you want the growth, where you're looking for the growth, if you don't know that, hiring a consultant is not going to solve your problem, right? Because if you don't know it, they can't read your mind. They're ready to go. In this case, Katrina and her team are ready to dive in. We've talked at length about the impact your company has had with building structure, accountability, just asking what seem like simple questions that really unearth 5, 8, 10x growth in companies. But until you're ready to understand what that journey is going to be like, just pause, do a little more deep thinking, because I think that's when you arrive. When both people arrive at that spot, some really great things can happen, my guess. As we think about business athletes, I like to refer to them, but high charging leaders, right? Male, female, doesn't matter, really doesn't matter about background. And they're trying to take their team in a direction. And they're getting some resistance from the team. They're the visionary, they're hard charging, and the team is, maybe we should stay back. When you've gone in there, maybe you've seen it in your own company. When you've gone in there, what is the one, if you could distill it down to one thing, what's one thing that's typically holding back, or what creates that disconnect between hard charging visionary and team that kind of has their heels dug in on, hold on, we don't need to go there yet? Is there any one thing that you've seen as an overarching, yeah, we run into that a lot?
I do. It's usually distraction. They're being distracted by shiny things. And at the end of the day, I am the one that will go to a CEO or team and say, look, at the end of the day, there are going to be times when the CEO has to be able to pull their card and say, I understand how you all feel about this. Thank you for sharing this with me. Let's try this and see what happens. And when I see resistance from the executive team, it's usually because they feel like whatever they do next is forever. And I'm usually in there mediating and saying, look, if it's not working, just roll it back. It's really not that difficult. So let's just try it and then we can roll it back. You have to leave some type of room for innovation and experimentation. And even if we're trying something that this visionary is really gassed up about, and if it doesn't work, there are still opportunities there that we learned. When I have an idea, I have to see it through because I believe this is going to get really woo woo, but I believe that if the idea is still stuck in my head like year after year, if I don't do anything about it, it's just going to be stuck in my head. If I do something about it and find a way to externalize that idea, it's now gone and there's space for the next idea to come in, which could be a fantastic idea that's actually going to work. But until that happens, I will never know. It's like authors writing books. We hear about these best-selling books or these best-selling authors, but what people don't understand is that book that you finally learn that author's name is probably their 5th, their 10th, their 20th book. And they would have never gotten to that book that has had widespread success had they not written all the other books. And being a visionary in a company, you're an artist. You're a creative artist. It's just business is, or products or services, whatever type of business you have, is the way that we express our artistry to externally to the world. And so even something as simple as I keep an idea bank. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have a project management software and I just put all my ideas in there. And the thing about ideas is I don't have to be the one to execute on those ideas. Sometimes I will talk to somebody like yourself who's probably thinking about a problem that they need to solve or that you need to solve. And I'm like, hey, I had this idea. Take it. Take it. The cross pollination of ideas is how humans have evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. That's how technology has evolved, is because we weren't afraid to not only share our ideas but express them through an artistic way. So if there is a team that is very resistant to it, if I were the visionary, I would help them understand why this is important, but then I would set limitations and I would say, you know what, let's just try this for 90 days. Or let's do the thing where we can put it in a customer's hand. Let's get like a minimum viable product, put it in the customer's hand, get data, and now we have data to support whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. And another thing that I will tell you, which is really important, I hope your listeners grasp this, is there is no book, there is no podcast, there is no movie, there is no silent retreat or ayahuasca ceremony that is going to solve all of your business problems. The quickest way to building a successful business or transitioning a business or pivoting is what I say is to just do the damn thing.
Yep.
Just do the thing and do it quickly. So do it to where you don't need to spend millions of dollars developing a technology. Create something that you can get into customers' hands. You can do it manually and just see if it's something they're willing to even put money behind. And like, don't spend 2 years and $4 million building a technology that is an idea that you think you're going to change the world with when it hasn't touched a customer's hands. So I believe in just doing the damn thing. Give me a little bit of resources, give me a certain amount of time, let me put it in someone's hands, let's get feedback, and then we will know whether we should kill the idea or build the next iteration of that idea.
So this is perfect because at the end of the day, regardless of whether you're running a large corporate team, you're an athlete getting ready to move into your what's next in life, or somewhere in between, honestly, through any transition, what I hear is 2 words very clearly: take action. I think there's a lot of us that get the analysis paralysis thing. To your point, I'm going to read more books, I'm going to listen to more podcasts. If I can just get one more Joe Rogan tip, just please, somebody give me that. Do something. And I know that sounds trivial, but the reality is, if you do know your why, we call it the North Star, if you really understand where you're going and why you're going there, and you're a little bit stuck, just take action. Get started in one direction. You'll either meet the person that can help you in sort of Katrina's version of who, not how. Dan Sullivan, I'm part of Strategic Coach. We're a huge fan of strategic circles. Write it down, walk it through. There's a pros and cons. I call it the Strategic Coach training room, and my staff in our different companies will roll their eyes because they know that is the place where Bryan Finnerty's crazy, wacky ideas get stacked up, but they're all there so they can get out of my head. And to your point, someone might look at that board and go, oh, I was just thinking about us launching XYZ over at Galway Bay and Apparel. We need a waterproof golf bag. I see the idea that he had. A lot of it sounds crazy, but I see a place I can take action. It's just a starting point. So I think your advice there is very sage, that just take some action, create the minimal viable product, create the minimal viable idea to just get some feedback, right? It's so worth it. And so I cannot emphasize that enough. It works across all platforms, all businesses. Just go out and take action. All right. So as we come down to the 2-minute drill here, a couple of things. Let's lead in with, and this is probably a tough one because you do this across so many different clients, but if there's one thing that you could say a leader could do in the next 30 days to build trust and real action, right? Where I want to build some trust with my team. What's something I could do over the next 30 days immediately to go back in tomorrow, the next day, and just start putting in action to see a couple of quick wins? What would you throw out there?
Go talk to your people. Go to the front. Where are the front lines? Go to the front lines. Figure out what problems they're trying to solve. There's a certain level a company gets to where a CEO should not be spending all of their time behind a computer. They need to go out. They need to talk to people. They need to talk to customers. They need to look at strategic partnerships, like big ones, not like small ones, but like giant ones. You need to make sure your company is always positioned to be able to sell, like an exit. You need an exit plan just in case. So I feel like if there's something that they can do for 30 days, literally go talk to as many people in the organization as you can and figure out what types of problems they're trying to solve. And listen, even if you feel like you have the wherewithal, see how they're doing personally in their personal lives. One of my clients had a manager that their boss was complaining to me about. They're just always so anxious, like very high strung, very anxious, catastrophized some issues. And I went back to them and I asked them, what do you think it is? I don't know. It's because things are moving so fast and all of these things that had to do with business. I ended up having a one-on-one with this person who's a great person, cared about the company, and it turns out they weren't sleeping enough. It was very simple. They just weren't getting enough sleep. And so I worked with him and we worked on a plan to minimize his video game playing. It sounds silly, but yeah, this is where it comes down to habits, right? So as a CEO, I would go talk to as many people as I can to build trust in the organization and really not only listen to what they have to say, but follow up with them on those things. Hey, Bryan, I took what you told me, I did some research, and here's what I found. And here's how I did that research. And just passing on knowledge, passing on resources. People ask me, equity is a big conversation that we have, equity and equality in the HR world. And I always get asked, how do you close the equity gap? To me, it is a knowledge gap. And if you can go to your front lines and teach them how the business runs, teach them business, get them in conversations with people in their upline, supervisors, managers, executives, C suite, whoever, get them in those conversations and teach them how to have those types of conversations. And you will create a much more equitable workplace because then if they understand the business, they understand the customer, when there's a position that opens that is a level up from their career path, they will feel much more confident and they will feel much more equipped to be successful in that role because they've made all of these contacts. They have all of this knowledge. And if they don't have knowledge, they know who to go to. And you've told them and you've nurtured them and you've conditioned them to feel like, hey, when you don't know something, you can come and talk to me about it. And to me, that is the quickest path to equity. Yes, pay, salary banding, compensation modeling. Yes, but you can pay two people the same thing. But if one person has access to more resources because they work with a particular manager and that manager shares more knowledge, and the other person works with a manager who hasn't been held accountable to not sharing that type of knowledge, we have an equity problem still. So if I were someone and I had a trust issue, that's what I would do. I would go and talk to as many people in your organization of all levels as much as you can and learn.
I love that because this is what it's not. It is not a hack. It's not a get something quick, but it is a win in the next 30 days and it will work. We like to say get out, right? You want to be a great CEO, a great leader, a great founder, a great owner, get out. Not get out of the business, get out from behind your desk, get out from behind your phone, get out from behind your computer. Our audience knows I'm a huge fan of journaling. I will say this, take a journal with you, whether it's your phone, I use an iPad, whatever it is, write the stuff down. Katrina just said that because the information will be invaluable. And most importantly, you're going to want to follow up on it. You're going to hear some things you don't want to hear. They're going to make your skin crawl. That's the hard part. But the reality is you're going to learn something in every conversation. And to Katrina's point, when you go back to them and say, I heard you and I did something about it, doesn't mean you have to physically do the work. You may pass it out and delegate that work. But when they see that you've taken action, you do build trust. You show them that you care. You show them that you listened and that you actually did something about it. That has nothing to do with sitting behind a desk, and it's about taking action. It's like the recurring theme of our conversation here. Katrina, as we wind down, this has been so awesome. My audience knows, like I refer to people like you as my SEAL Team 6, right? That we've got a really great team of resources. Rush in, do the dirty work, not for the reason of sticking around and being with you for the next 12 years, but if you need help in 12 days, 12 weeks, 12 months, you can do that work. And so my hope is, folks, if you need help on the HR side, that's like a table stakes thing. That work will lead to a great human, which obviously you're getting to meet today, that brings so much more to the table when you're ready. And when you've had those conversations, take the idea here and get some quick wins. And those quick wins will come with, yeah, maybe we have some broken parts we need to fix. I know Katrina can do that for sure. We've seen it in action. I've seen her with some of our group at San Diego Sports Innovators as well. Katrina, as you then look into the future, right, as we're looking at companies and where they are, and I think you've answered this, but I wonder if there's just one exclamation point. Take away everything that we know on LinkedIn, all the crap that gets posted there and the shit we read on the sides. As leaders, as founders, as owners, what do we owe our people? Right? Because I think that can feel like a very woo mysterious thing. But you and you shoot it straight. You've been very good. There's I think 0 cuss words at this point. What do we
Wait, I need to fix
There you
that.
go. Done. Thank you. That's what we're waiting for. What do we owe the people in organizations, right? Because you've seen it as an owner and also as someone in a corporate. What do we owe them?
The first thing that came to mind was the truth. And when I say the truth, I would say in action, in exercise, this is probably more like feedback in real time. So I have a rule, and it's not just professionally. I have this personally also, that I am not allowed to complain or gossip or however you want to call it to someone about another person until I've actually had the conversation with the person. And when I say feedback in real time, as a woman, it has been hard over my career because I have done this and I do it so instinctively now as a woman, because I'm so direct and I'm very matter of fact about my words. I get criticized for not being eloquent enough, which you'll never hear a man being criticized for his lack of eloquence. It's a very feminine trait that for some reason I get held accountable to, and I am not eloquent. I don't fill our conversations with a lot of filler words, right? I don't say things like, I hope you had a good weekend. I feel like that's pretty implied because I'm a good person. I don't need to say those things. So I don't ask questions like, how are you? I will ask a much more specific question. Bryan, what's exciting you these days? Because I actually do want to know that. I actually do. Like, if I ask, how are you? And you're like, I haven't taken a shit in 3 days. I'm like, okay, I could give you some advice, but I don't think you're going to really be open with me. You're just going to say, I'm good. So I really try to be intentional with my conversations, and that has led to being able to give feedback in real time. If Bryan tells me he determines he's going to get back to me in 2 days about a specific thing. If that 2 days comes and goes, you best believe Bryan's going to get an email in his inbox. And I'm like, what happened?
Yep.
And I'm not going to say, I hope everything's well. I'm going to say, what happened? Because if things are not well, it's up to you to have that conversation with me so we can figure that out. So we owe our people the truth, and the truth comes in feedback in real time. I'm not talking about don't wear that shirt because it looks awful on you. That's just an opinion, right? I'm talking about feedback. Feedback means I actually care about Bryan's spiritual, professional, personal growth. And so if you show up even 1 minute late, I'm the one that's going to say, Bryan, you said 12 o'clock p.m. You didn't say 12:01. And that is just letting you know that I have expectations. And it's when we both agree to 12, we both agreed. Now, if I had said 12 and you're like, you know what, Katrina, I think 12:01 works better for my schedule, fine by me. And so it's really holding people to their integrity, making sure that you maintain a culture of integrity, which is doing what you say you'll do when you say you do it. And you can only achieve that. You can only achieve integrity and responsibility and accountability if you give feedback in real time, which is the truth.
Yep.
So we owe that to our teams. You should not be having side conversations about whether I don't know if Bryan's the right person for this role anymore. You better have a good fucking reason of why you're saying that to other people, and you haven't had that conversation with Bryan. You're just gossiping. And again, if that's your habit as an executive team, your entire organization is probably gossiping and not being effective at their jobs.
That closes the loop, right? Because we talk about in the very beginning, it's what is culture all about? How does it get fractured? Where is it broken? And at the end of the day, the truth is really the basis. And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to look at a super high performing sports team. And you hear those coaches talk about and there's a lot of sound bites for them, but they talk about giving direct feedback to players in the right moment, when they're ready to listen, when they're ready to learn, and they don't hold back and they don't create these loops behind players' backs. And that's why they succeed. And it doesn't really change. If anything, when we go to the corporate world, it should be better. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That is a reminder, and for some, maybe a nudge, that get out from behind the desk, go see it first, and then speak the truth. Because when you do, I think both of us would be massively shocked if you didn't see really incredible gains and returns. Katrina, where do people find you? Because I'm sure after listening to this, they're like, wow, there's a lot here that I could really use some help unpacking. Where do they find you? How do they reach you? How do they follow you and get more of this great information we've been talking about?
Bryan, your audience is very lucky because I am the only Katrina Ghazarian in the entire world. So all they have to do is put my name in LinkedIn and you'll find my profile. You can find my website, which is www.gamedayhr.com. You might see some comedy stuff here and there, but that was just, again, a level of my artistry that I got out, which I tried, and now I don't feel like doing it anymore. But you can contact me on my LinkedIn is the easiest way to get a hold of me. I try to check it every day. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from your people.
Yeah. And all that will be in the show notes. So if you're driving out for a jog or taking the dog for a walk, it's all in the links below. It will be worth your time, right? Because I can tell you that we've really had a great run of people who want to pour into others. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. And I can tell you the feedback we've had from our audience of, wow, I really did reach out and they responded to me. This has been amazing. And it's not always about, and in fact, very little about how do we get our next client, but more importantly, can we help? And I think you're going to find that in this culture of really great high-performing athletes that care and love on people, who understand their why of, I just want to be an awesome mom and I want to be present. You got that here today. Katrina, thank you for joining us on the show. Folks, as always, if you like it, subscribe, pass it on to somebody who might need to hear this, especially if it's a voice from those that are trying to do more in this world with a little bit of challenge. And I think Katrina's just called that out straightforward, both as owners, as female owners, and where our voice lands with our people. So thank you for speaking the truth as the lessons were going. And thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Bryan.
All
Great
right.
conversation.
Another episode of What's Next. Thanks, guys, and we'll catch you on the flip side.